Hello, everyone. It's another Friday night, and it's another edition of the Supernatural Substation on the United Public Radio Network. It is, for those who are keeping track, the 15th of September. Would that be the Ides of September? I don't know. At any rate, there is someone waiting in the wings. That's my co-host, Bernadine LeBlanc. Bernadine, where you at?
What's up?
What up? What up? Not much, but we may have interruptions of the animal kind tonight since I'm alone and I have to control my toddler-size Doberman, which is impossible. So I'm glad we're talking to Linda Godfrey tonight because she's all about the beast and the werewolves and everything else. So we might actually have soundtracks or sound effects. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'll do my best. Zeke's already bitching about it, so yeah. So another edition. Here we are, and we will be giving away those tickets, and we're going to do it at the end of the show. Actually, in the last half of the show, the last 15 minutes or so. So stick around. We have 3 entrants. Those tickets are for free passes, 2 free passes to the Gulf Coast Paracon, which is next weekend.
Yay!
In Biloxi, Mississippi at Beauvoir. You can check out the SPARS Paranormal page. That's SPARS Paranormal. And click on events and you'll have all the information. Bernadine and I will be there. And I think I figured out how we'll do a live broadcast from there. So we'll both be doing holding down each end. I'll explain it to you later, Bernadine. But anyway, okay. I've got this crazy idea. I think it'll work. So anyway, but we wanted to usually in the first 30 we like to talk about stuff that comes across our desks, as you might say. And so I sent Bernadine this link from, I don't know where I got it from. I think it was like one of these things that I subscribe to that has lists, and ranks. Oh, I don't know, different things. In this case, you hadn't heard of this, and
Never.
I thought we had a conversation about this actually. So, but there's been a lot of press out there for it. The McCamey Manor, the 8-hour haunt of assault violation and puke swallowing. And this article goes into some detail about this extreme haunted house experience. And apparently it is, it started in San Diego, California, but now I don't know if it's a good thing. It's franchising. So we can go to Alabama or Nashville and experience ourselves, but I don't think so. What it is those who are interested in being physically battered, tortured, psychologically battered, almost killed, exposed to known allergens, exposed to body fluids of other people, drinking their own vomit, pee, and whatever, being buried alive with roaches or spiders or snakes, or being put into a pool of eels with only like an inch to breathe, 8 feet of water with a cage door on top. I mean, you get the picture, right? I don't know whose idea of fun that actually is. It's probably fun for the people that run it. And it has gotten a lot of bad press over the time because apparently these, the ones who dole out all this misery are actors who are recruited. And in order to do it, they have 27,000 people waiting on the wait list.
Oh my
to get
goodness.
into this place. That should be the scariest thing of all.
That's
right
like
there.
Voluntary post-traumatic stress disorder waiting to happen.
Forever, for the rest of your life. Well, I mean, why don't they volunteer to go to Iraq? You know, just go in the military. You know, you can get all that plus all the benefits. Apparently, people who choose to subject themselves to this have to sign a waiver. And I didn't really open the waiver. I'm going to look at it, but they have to sign a waiver about, to acknowledge that they will be physically, could be whatever, physically injured, serious injuries, and all this other stuff. I'd like to see it because I think at some point they probably cross a line. And if it was me, I wouldn't sign a waiver for anything like that. Well, I wouldn't be going But if it was my intent to go, I'd have my own attorney. You know, obviously, they've got to be charging out the ass for this. You know, whoever goes. But they say all of their profits go to what is it? Greyhound, saving a greyhound charity for, you know, greyhounds that are what do you call it? Retired from racing. And so I was looking at this list, and I don't know if you were, but I'm going to read off some of the headings. There's no safe word, but no one has finished the experience. Attendees sign an insane waiver allowing legal torture. Hey, what are we waiting for? I had to go back to San Diego. It's all for charity, seriously. Okay, well, one good shining light. It's filled with scenarios designed to psychologically break people, and it does. The terrifying experience is different every time. It's as unpredictable as the actors. They probably are not. I don't know what they're doing. You know, there we go with our soundtracks. I don't know what they're doing to vet these, you know, these actors, and that people are basically putting themselves in the hands of. I mean, there's a good chance that some of these people are concealing, you know, crimes and stuff that they have been convicted of. And there's another good chance that, you know, these people are not EMS, or, you know, they're not emergency trained or CPA trained, you know, CPRs are bad too. Nobody can survive.
And may have anger issues, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and they're looking for a legal way to take it out on somebody, and there's no way to predict what they're going to do. I mean, that sounds like, you know, walking naked through, you know, fraternity row with a sign on, you know, saying looking for friends or whatever. Attendees with undisclosed bee allergies could die. That's the aforementioned bees, roaches, and none of these pictures. In these pictures, nobody looks like they're having any fun. I mean, not just nobody, but nobody looks like they're having any fun. Attendees are subjected. Oh, you have to go through 8 hours of this, and nobody's made it so far. They are locked in coffins filled with insects and spiders. They have gas pumped into these coffins. I don't know what kind of gas, but I think it's probably something to either kill the bugs or make them move around. And you're supposed to stay just completely still. So they lost me. If they hadn't lost me up until then, they've lost me now, because roaches, it's just not happening. Nothing is off limits, and actors enjoy the work. I guess they do, which brings me back to, and then attendees have their faces shoved into water, dirty water, and held there. And they don't respond to please stop, please stop. You know, they don't respond to that. One girl almost drowned. And it is so extreme that some attendees appear to have gone into shock. And there's some sort of a legal thing pending about that. Anyone who vomits has to drink their own puke. That's delightful. Let's see. Yeah, isn't that wonderful? I mean, let's go now. And the waiting list is 27,000 people for the one that was in San Diego. I guess the original one, but I think it moved out of San Diego and is now in some other area. But this is insane, you know, and they call it a haunted house. And you know, they don't, that's not haunted, you know, that's not a haunted house. That's
where you
terror.
can end up with broken fingers or even be buried alive.
Or die.
Yeah, no.
No, I mean, premature burial is a nightmare that I've always had. I mean, I'm not giving out all my phobias, but I have a very healthy fear of being, you know, buried alive. To which point, as much as I hate burning alive, when I'm dead, I'm gonna be cremated, because I'm not interested in the coffin, except to be displayed, display purposes only. You know, memorial.
Put a bell on your toe.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna. They're cremating me. I just want to make sure I'm dead before they do it. But you know, this is what I was mentioning to you. It's like there's a difference. People have lost track of what horror actually is, and terror, and they blur it, because to me this would be terror. This is like the movies Saw or Hostel or
Yeah.
Jason to the nth, whatever, pi, e to the EC square, whatever, or Freddy to the same, whatever. That is not horror. Um, and the trouble starts when they don't read horror. Um, horror is not it's not all of this. Let me slice you up and draw. That's not horror. There's the difference between being terrified and being horrified. And when I say horror, I'm talking about Dracula, the original book. Some of the great writers, like The Turn of the Screw, Henry James, the movie The Haunting. Remember we saw that at a Paracon. It's that sort of classic where in that particular movie, The Haunting, and somebody dinged me on YouTube when I suggested that would be a good movie to somebody. But you never really see. You don't see the enemy. You don't see the entity. And it's horrifying nonetheless. You don't ever see it, but you see what's happening to the people because of it. And it is engrossing. And so it brings up an empathy and a compassion. Terror just turns you off. I mean, there are a lot of ways to chop up people and do. I mean, they've, in Hollywood and wherever has really come up with some good stuff. And I don't mean good in a good way, but you can only do that so much. There's blood, whoever it is going to die. If it doesn't have that sort of foreboding, that feeling of this impending gloom or doom, then it's not.
Why would people even want that, even if it's for charity? To do something that extreme.
Right. I mean, they should want to go and be locked inside of a real haunted place by themselves, or, with two other people and pay, that much. And a really, like, I don't know, Penhurst or, whatever. And I think you can have, those, but I mean, that would be my choice if I was going to go. I would never, and I would not even want to know anyone who thinks that this is okay.
How do they get ready for work? The employees.
They don't work. I mean, yeah. How do they get ready? I read that like sometimes they say every situation, every case is different. But one started where they took this person to a trailer out in the woods, and they tied him up in the trailer, and they left him there for whatever amount of time. And then people came in, grabbed them, gagged and blindfolded them, tied them up, and took them, to wherever they inflict this pain and suffering. And I don't know.
I wonder if they add that to their resume.
Well, yeah. Yeah, for under extracurricular activities, right? Yeah. I like to be in simulated violence situations. Ladies and gentlemen, when you do listen, you will hear a dog in the background. Can't help it. Nothing I can do. You might hear a cat too, being chased. But this to me is like, it's a fine line. And I wouldn't, first of all, whoever these people are, I wouldn't trust anybody with anybody's life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, let's hire serial killers and,
Yeah. What do they do to assure people that these are not, that these are not wanted individuals? Like, they don't have their pictures,
do they do a background check,
Yeah, I mean, and I want to, where are they? Can we look at the human resources? You know what I mean? Is there a folder or a file?
Call their last job. Is it okay if we use these people to torture other people?
Yeah,
Would they be good at that job?
He just got released from Angola, or Leavenworth, and he's just, I mean, it's a situation set up to end badly, very badly.
And on the supernatural side, just think of the bad spirits just waiting.
Yeah.
Waiting to come in.
That are, they're just feeding on this energy of fear and
Right.
anger. I mean, it's just there's no way that
Anger
this
and fear.
passes. Anger, fear, hatred, all these suppressed emotions.
Trauma.
Something has to be wrong with a person who will make another person, I don't care what it's for, drink their own vomit or eat feces.
Subject yourself to this.
And whoever would do it, right? They have to be, meant. These are not all fine, upstanding members of society. I don't care if there's 27,000 of them. Well, I want to see that list, right? I mean,
right.
The NSA should be spying on them, right? I mean, seriously.
It's not like these people that go in the underground places. What do you call that? Dominatrix or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a big secret thing where they go and get whipped and all this with chains and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, they leave with their life,
Yeah.
That's just a secret they're holding. These people here are putting their lives in danger.
Well, they're really putting their lives in danger spiritually.
They can even have a heart attack,
Well, right. That's the other thing. They're really like not clearing these people medically. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen allegedly the application and the waiver is like a 10-page packet. But at what point? And then I read in this article that a man did actually go to the police, but they couldn't do the police allegedly could not do anything because the person had signed a waiver. So I don't know where that waiver becomes binding. I guess within reason, like in the situation you're talking, like S&M and bondage and all this, that's between two consenting adults, and so it's hard there. But this isn't the same thing. This isn't between just two consenting adults. This is crime being committed, and everybody's okay with it, and there are people, I guess, in prison going, hell, I'll go out there. That's a job for me. Why am I in jail? And there goes my Halloween door. Soundtrack tonight is all spooky stuff. So anyway, but it's been around, I think since like 2015 or so. Maybe last year I heard about it a little bit more. I think I might have seen it, but it was a tough 2 years. But there's no way. And this is the thing, they just don't understand it. And it's really mashing all this stuff together and calling it horror. You remember the series Penny Dreadful, right?
Yes.
It was popular because it was a gothic horror series. And it had every major gothic horror icon in it, right? It did get canceled, but it ended badly in a stupid third season. But Joe is dinging us from Skype. But what was I going to say? In comparing that to like The Walking Dead, okay? The Walking Dead is not horror, not at all. It's not even good anymore. But when it was good, it still wasn't horror. It was terror. And there's a fine line between, and it's hard. It's harder to do horror and do it well, so that people will pay to see it. People will go to the movies and pay to see it. It's difficult. And it's easier, I guess, just let some girl run through the woods and, somebody chase her with a machete or something. I guess that's easier. And to me, that's a cop-out. But over the years, we've really lost the definition of what is truly horrifying and disturbing and not terrorizing, and shock-inducing. So, and this is right up there. So, I mean, I wish we could find a survivor and have whoever that might be come on the show. It would be great just to just to give them a little time to work it out.
I may have to look for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to have a first-hand account of all that, and then I'd like to, ask them, well, what is wrong? What is going on in your life that you felt?
How many meds are you on now?
I got a feeling that there are more guys than girls that go through this particular thing. It just seems like something that would attract more men than it would women or females. But there are pictures of females in this situation, and they don't look happy at all.
No.
I guess a lot of people are saying, oh, it can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. Well, apparently it is. This is not like the 13th Gate, in Baton Rouge, which is a great haunted attraction, where it's jump scares and they never put their hands on you. This is entirely different, and I don't like the idea that it's franchising at all. That's just terrible. It's something that's going to
shows you how bad the world is getting.
Well, yeah, that people would want to go to this extreme to actually stimulate some sort of, I don't know, feeling of life or whatever. I mean, I would say that it's the direct opposite. Obviously, you don't value your life enough. I don't know. I'm looking at some of the pictures, and it's just, I don't want to know any of these people. Don't want to know the guy who started it, and I don't want to know any of the people that survived it. But I would like to talk to one or two and see, what, when did you wake up that morning and just decide, oh, I'm going to sign up for the McCamey, whatever, Monster Mash. I mean, it's not like deciding to put on this pair of jeans and a shirt or something. This is entirely different. And I hate it. Being a writer, is, and I write, I would say that my, most of what I write is, in the vein or in the same Gothic style as, the ones we have named, like, Dracula, Frankenstein, and all that other stuff. And I would put Stephen King into the terror thing. When I saw It last week, and it was terrifying, but it was good. But I knew I was going to be. I didn't go in there thinking I'm going to see, I don't know, Jane Eyre or some deep psychological, melancholy House of Usher type stuff. I knew it was Stephen King. And it was terrifying, and it was great. But this kind of stuff, I'd rather just be locked up in, some big empty building, which is, that's kind of like terrifying enough. It's horror, it is terrifying, because you don't know what's in there with you. So that's an interesting point, though, you made. It's like, how has your spirituality changed? Are you haunted? Do you hear voices? Is there anything, we can do for you, come and get rid of what's in your house now? I don't know, but I don't understand how something like this could operate unregulated, right? Because I would say, and this just came to me, like somebody who is willing to sign that kind of a waiver, I would call them mentally unstable. I would call them not able to determine their own. There we go, the dog. Ooh, okay, you're probably hearing her. I wouldn't consider them psychologically well, and I would say if I was a family member or somebody who cared, I'd say he can't make his own decisions at this point. Look what he just signed up to do.
Yeah.
Signing up for this, I can beat him at home. It's like, oh, you being abusive.
You do that stuff at home when you go to jail.
Yeah, but if you sign a waiver and you go do it in a so-called attraction, anything goes, and that's complete ignorance. And that just shows where people are not. They don't even have a concept. It's the audiences have been dumbed down by years of this kind of like I mentioned Saw. I don't like any of those movies. No. I think it's just totally stupid. It's ignorant, and it's sitting there watching people go through this, and it always scares me. Excuse me. When they come up with these things like in Saw, where they put on these apparatuses and, or they wake up in a tank or a cistern full of, dirty needles and stuff. I mean, who thinks this stuff up? Who, when they did Hostel, I don't know if you saw that years ago, but it was, people were kidnapping hostel, residents or, travelers, young travelers stay in hostels across Europe. It's affordable, cheap, and, it's mostly, so somebody was, harvesting victims from the local hostel. And there was this one thing, and you can watch and you can think, okay, this is like, you can kind of see how that's up. But then this guy took a drill or a saw, like an autopsy saw, a mortuary thing, and cut the guy on the back of his foot, right at above the Achilles heel. You cut that tendon. Yeah, just think of that. Okay, think of that. Who thought that up? Oh, look, he's doing this and this and this to him, and let's just do that too. I want to know where that guy lives, and if he's in the same town as me, I want to move in a different, like neighborhood. Who thinks that crap up? Like, oh, hey, we could do this and then this and then this. It's just, I don't know.
How bad can we make it?
Yeah, how more offensive and stupid. Shoot, I mean, they could just go here and film this ridiculous stuff. Buried alive, and I'm scrolling through again. Buried alive under 12 feet. Okay, as the site's waiver points out, all of this takes place, and they're talking about the critters and the insects and stuff, under 12 feet of dirt and rocks. Can you imagine that? I would die. I wouldn't make it through just to the threshold of that. There's no possible way. And it's going to be a matter of time. And that is it before, somebody's going to end up dead. And there are poisonous animals too. And people with allergies need not apply. So, so when you go for these, these scare houses and all this other stuff, just remember, it's terror. If you like these things, you're really a fan of terror and not of true horror. So we might come back to this if Dean can dig up, no pun intended, a survivor of the McCamey haunted manor or whatever this is. So, but Joe is telling us that our guest is in the queue, so I'd like to bring her in. Her name is Linda Godfrey, and those of you who are familiar with anything to do with werewolf sightings, cryptozoology, etc., will recognize Linda's name as the woman who discovered the Beast of Bray Road. So, Linda, are you with us? She's not there, Joe. She was. Well, Joe might have to get her back. I'm going to go to just read. I know she has a new book that is out, and we're just going to read a little bit about that. It's called Monsters Among Us.
Said she is.
Are you there, Linda? I don't know if you can hear us. I can't hear anything.
Hello?
Okay, let's try this. Is that better?
Oh,
Yeah, that's better.
Hey,
Definitely.
I'm here.
Hey.
I was trying to do something fancy and I should have known better. Just stick with what works, right?
That's right. Well, you probably heard all the things we said about you. We're sorry. No, we were talking about.
No, I did. I heard.
Yeah.
I could hear. I just couldn't get the mic actually working. So
the first time that I heard your name or actually saw you was on TV talking about the Beast of Bray Road, and that I know that's been what 20 plus years now.
Oh yeah,
it's been out there. So and now there are other people, I guess, who can tell us all about that. But anyone who really knows about you knows how you basically started as a writer for a local paper. And so why don't you take us back to that? And did you get the assignment to go out there, or did somebody contact you and say, hey, they're seeing this walking wolf or whatever out up the road? I mean, how did that happen for you?
Yeah, that pretty much described it. I was going along minding my own business, working on other types of stories, and a woman who she was actually a school bus driver, and she sometimes submitted articles for the paper, and she said she had heard about this first from somebody on her school bus, and then started connecting dots and realized there were several people, and actually more than that, quite a few, talking about something that looked like a werewolf, a wolf or dog wolf or something like that on hind legs out on this less than 4 mile long road just outside of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, which is the county seat of Walworth County. We're kind of down near the Illinois-Wisconsin border in the southeastern corner of Wisconsin. So I remember laughing and thinking, yeah, there's a werewolf in Elkhorn, right? And it just so happened I started checking around with people I knew and just saying, have you heard anything about this? And more often than not, the answer was yes. And it just so happened that I was working at the time with our county animal control officer on a story about, he was trying to break up some puppy mills, and then there were some other animal-related atrocities. He had found a few bags with mutilated dogs in them. So I happened to be in his office and asked him if he'd heard about it. And at this point, I'm just really sort of fishing around, and he said, oh, yeah. He pulls out this file folder, an actual manila office file folder, and I kid you not, it is labeled werewolf. And, of course, that's when my eyes were boinging out of my head, like, those old Bugs Bunny cartoons where the eyes come right out of their faces on spring. That's how it felt. Because, when you've got a county official of any kind with a file folder marked werewolf, that's, not, he may have been somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but there it was, right with his other files and these other bona fide operations he was working on. And he shared the contents with me. It was short reports from people who had called in and basically said, I saw this thing, I don't know what it was, but if there was such a thing as a werewolf, this would be it. It's what it looked like. And he shared their contact information with me. I talked to them, and I realized it was a very diverse group of people, and that none of them seemed like they were wackadoodle or like they were trying to pull a hoax or anything like that. Several of them were, really quite upset and scared about it, even though one of the sightings had taken place a few years earlier. One had been quite recent. There was another one that came up that was like 10 years earlier, and I realized this is actually something that had been around for a while. People didn't know what it was. It sounded like it could be a dangerous predator because it was way bigger than, they were saying it stood 6 or 7 feet tall. That's no coyote. So
I'm sorry, Linda, you're going to hear some sound effects in the background because I'm alone with my dog and I have a door that squeaks. So we thought it was perfect if she barks and does things, for the,
well,
sound effects for you.
You make it an answer because in about between 5 and 8 minutes from now, my husband's going to come home and open the door, and my little dog's going to go wild upstairs. So we'll have the canine chorus, the canine chorale.
It's already starting.
Yep. So,
so I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to let you know.
No problem. But anyway, they were all describing basically the same thing. They said it had like a wolf or a German shepherd, ran or bounded or leapt on its hind legs very easily, sometimes dropping down to all fours or sometimes starting on all fours and then standing up and running off on two. It was seen eating things like roadkill or carrying a piece of deer meat or something like that in its forelimbs. It had regular greenish yellow, the normal color of canine eye shine, a tail. It seemed to be perfect, covered with shaggy fur. Most of them were saying dark brown. So, it was a pretty consistent description. And I thought at the very least, they should know that there's a possibly dangerous animal, and maybe they should, keep a watch on your toddlers and, lock up the chickens and that kind of thing. So I thought that it deserved to be told, just for that point alone. And the fact that our county animal control officer had that manila file folder and that these people seemed so sincere. So I wrote it up. It appeared in our newspaper on the New Year's Eve weekend of 1991-92. And, we just thought it would be something kind of fun and informative for people. Within 2 weeks, I can't say it went viral because there was really no internet as we know it now. It went national via the news organizations. And we had every Milwaukee and Madison TV station coming to our little office. We had we had national TV, radio stations across the country, people calling me and writing me and saying they had the same thing by them. I know a man called from Michigan and said they had the Michigan Dogman. He was a DJ it had happened several years before, except they just for some reason didn't get known for it. Well, this just popped and it has never gone back in the bag. And I worked at that newspaper for 10 years. I heard somebody mischaracterize my career as that, well, as soon as that hit, I just went for the so-called limelight and started hunting this thing. And it's really not true. I put it off for 10 years. I had no intention really of doing anything except publicizing it. And I think during those 10 years, I wrote maybe 4 follow-ups. Whenever there seemed to be a collection of things that needed to be said, I would write a short update. And every time I did, it just the following grew and grew. I was getting letters and calls still and realizing that this was a much wider phenomenon. And during that time, I was writing every week 2 or 3 stories on every other thing that you see in a small town newspaper, the normal stuff. Maybe a little more than that, because it was actually a pretty cool news feature magazine. We won a lot of awards and had a lot of great photography. So it was a really nice opportunity for me to, hone some writing skills and prepare for what would be ahead. Well, after 10 years, there was still such great interest. I really felt that I should write a book where I would put it all down, everything as it happened, and that people would have a reference and a record of not only these sightings, but kind of the social aspect of what happened in the town where this occurred and how people reacted. And it was real. I mean, we had busloads of tourists coming up on Saturday night, taking the Bray Road tour, and then stopping at the local tavern for silver bullet specials, which the pubs, many of them were offering, that kind of thing. We had werewolf cookies being sold in the local bakery, T-shirts at the county fair,
So like the Mothman thing, huh?
Kind of, yeah, except they never ended up with a yearly festival. But at that time, it was pretty wild and crazy, especially that first year. And I just thought, well, it really was something that needed to be recorded. And I had another book that I've been already researching for 6 years, a true historic crime called The Poison Widow, a true story of sin, strychnine, and murder, which was a true murder story from the 20s, also from Walworth County, that had extremely unusual circumstances. It was very compelling. And I really wanted, that was actually my first book. And I went to a local, what was actually a state or regional historical press. And they printed that under their history imprint. And then they said, well, what else have you got? After I completed that. And I said, well, would you believe something that looks like werewolves? And they kind of gave me the shifty eye for a second. And when I explained it, they were really intrigued and asked me to write that book that became The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing Wisconsin's Werewolf. And then the whole ball got rolling after that.
Wow. Go on, Dean. I know you got questions.
Yeah. I know it's kind of a crazy question, but it did pop into my head. I know they have this fetish thing of bestiality, that they do have people that are into all that stuff. I don't know medically if a woman could get pregnant by an animal, but if they could, wouldn't they have it wouldn't be like a child beast type thing, and not. You've ever seen in the history books the kids that have the hair all over their face?
Yeah,
and
that's
you kind of wonder.
That's a different thing. That's a genetically.
I was about to say, who's your baby daddy?
No. It's called hypertrichosis, and that is they're 100% human. It's just that in their genes, there's a gene you can switch on for more hair, and that normally doesn't happen in human beings, but in their case, it did. And they end up with this thick mat of fur all over them. And there's a, in the Bible where Isaac is blessing Jacob and Esau, and they're twins that are born, and Esau comes out, the Bible says, covered with red fur like that of an animal. So it's possible that even, back in Bible times they had that, but it's very, very rare. It's a rare, rare condition. Now the first part of your question, honestly, you're the first radio host in 25 years that has asked me that question.
Well, I'm kind of crazy like that. So,
It's not,
yeah.
but you know what? I know kind of where you're going with it. You're wondering if it's possible for a werewolf to exist because of, a hybridization of a human and a canine. And that I know that's what you meant to be getting at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So between species that are as different as human and canines, it's usually not possible, not by normal means. There isn't sufficient likeness for the actual mating to be completed, for one thing. And if there were, who knows what it would look like or if it would be viable or not. But these days, I have to say that these days with genetic splicing and dicing, where they can grow a human ear on a mouse back, and they're learning, in many places to do that kind of thing, where you can put together two species that don't belong together and probably should not, or maybe just make them sort of a chimera where they've got more than one type of DNA in them, and they've selected for certain, maybe super hearing in a human. I'm just throwing out an example off the top of my head. Maybe they're trying to select for super hearing, a canine style hearing in a human, and so they would somehow grow the human to have these ear structures that are more like canines. But you have to think too, each of us is a whole living organism, and everything in a human is meant to work together as everything in a canine is meant to work together. And that sort of thing is probably what would hold that back from working, just in my opinion. And it's hard to answer this briefly too, because I have read quite a bit about this, just trying to figure out if it's possible. And the only way that I can see that it would be is, in the advanced gene manipulation that scientists are now able to do. And there, who knows what's possible and what isn't, because I have a feeling that the real cutting edge work in that field that's being done is top secret and not privy to the public. That's just how those things always work. So
that's good.
Yes.
I don't want to know about it, because every now and then we get a leak, something leaks out, like a picture or whatever, and you don't know whether it's true or not, but it's like hard to contemplate, because they're monkeying around with stuff,
Well, it's human nature. It just generally holds true that if there's anything a human gets it in their head that they want to do and that is available for them to do, if they're in the right position, they probably will do it at some point or another. And not everyone has the ethics to think that you shouldn't combine some of these species, or that it may be terrible for whatever it is that you create. Sort of like Frankenstein's monster was not a happy monster, because he was
right.
was not a full human, not a full monster. So it's a very thorny subject, but also it is a very valid and fascinating one, because when you're seeing things that people are saying look like a werewolf, which you consider mostly to be, in most people's minds, a combination of canine and human, you start grasping for these possibilities. Now, there is another way that would not involve flesh and blood mating or gene splicing or anything like that. And then you're talking about more of an occultic practice, where shamans in many nature-based cultures will actually learn how to draw sort of a type of spirit energy. And I'm just going to leave it at that really loose phrase of spirit energy, because no one knows exactly what it is. But it's almost as if they learn to take either take a thought form of their own or tune in on another frequency where something like that already exists and draw it forth from themselves, so that either it sort of covers them like a creature spirit suit, or it can actually go forth and do things on its own, kind of at their direction. Are you understanding what I'm?
So it's
yeah,
not like
no.
shape-shifting, correct?
Right, shape-shifting would be the most common word, yeah. And there are various different tribes that have their own names for it. It's almost universal in that type of culture. And that's a whole different thing than, the actual physical mating of two very different species.
Yeah, because the werewolf itself, the werewolf of classical Europe, it goes back centuries and centuries. What you're talking about is, forming a tulpa or an elemental thought form in the Scandinavian lands when, there were these great warriors who fought as their thought forms, and mostly bears. They mostly manifested on the battlefields. And there's a whole lexicon of how to turn into a werewolf, who could be, and it's particularly in France. They had the loup-garou and the whole history of that, and past a certain point when you're reading, like you did with the Beast of Bray Road, when you're hearing the different disparate descriptions that all have this thread going through them, you begin to suspect that there is something going on here. And if you eliminate the human factor of fakery or whatever, then what is it? It is, so because it's a supernatural being, and just like you're saying, there are rituals through which you can channel this being, and there are ways that demons can affect us or influence us or actually do magic on us to turn us into a beast for however amount of time that that we desire it or they desire it. So there's always been this hallmark of and that's what I was going to ask you next, about your opinion about the classical concept of there actually being people who turned into wolves, and your opinion. It seems like it's almost like this high culture compared to, like in Louisiana we have the rougarou. It's out there in the swamp, and we get like dog creatures and stuff down here, but I mean it started in Europe, and so it's strange to find it on a road in Wisconsin. So how does that happen?
Well, I want to mention first that especially those types of sightings that were the first ones along Bray Road, and which are by far the most common sightings reported to me personally over 25 years, where it doesn't have any actual human features in it. I mean, it's just as if a very large wolf or wolf-dog hybrid stood up and then, used its paws to hold something. Now, standing up, a mere canine standing on its hind legs is not supernatural. It's something any mammal can do. You can go on YouTube and just search for anything like bipedal dog dancing or upright dog walking or something like that, and you'll get almost every dog breed. Some are really wonderful. They can stand up quite straight and run around very easily on their hind legs. So if that's all you see, that is probably, there's no reason to really think it's supernatural. Although there are still aspects. Most people do say it looks at them, gives them this sort of uncanny stare and kind of sneer. I'll hear three words: sneers, jeers, and leers are the words people almost universally choose to describe the way it's looking at them. And of course, whenever you're looking at an animal face, that's open to interpretation. We're not always good at picking up on the cues of animal facial expressions because we're sort of so removed from our instinctive senses. So I have to put that in first, though. It's possible that there at some time, I call this the indigenous dog man theory, that it's for some reason they found it expedient to go on their hind legs. Maybe they had just in one of those natural mutation occurs that their paws were a little longer than most, and that indeed is one thing most witnesses report that's a little different. They'll say it had paws, but they were elongated, so they almost look like fingers, but they weren't. They were still the paw, but just longer and bigger. So that makes it easier to balance and stand on a skeleton that's not made to stand on its hind legs. If you think about it, each one of its limbs are really only meant to bear 1/4 the weight. And then all of a sudden, you're asking them to bear the whole weight on the 2 hind legs. And that's why most people will describe them as running or walking a little hunched over, because their neck is not in the correct alignment with their spine for bipedalism. So it makes a lot of sense that many of them could be something like that. And I've said right from the beginning, just because you have an upright canine-like being doesn't mean you have a werewolf or a dog man. I think there are different types of things. You still have to account for the ones that may be shapeshifters, and this so universally happens near so many Native American reservations, and I'm contacted by many Native American people. It seems to be where the biggest concentration of these types of sightings are, that I can't rule those out. And those are more humanoid looking. Those have actual shoulders. True canines do not have shoulders. They've just got a different structure meant for supporting their front limbs. But the shapeshifters very often seen near reservations have a different color eye shine. It's often red. They have the big shoulders. They do have hand-like limbs rather than paws. They may be wearing clothing. That's also another big tip-off. So,
whoa! Wonder where they shop.
It's not a classical werewolf. It's not an indigenous dog man. And there are several other types of things too. That get noted now and again in stories
we have they have the Wendigo. Then they have what is called, and this is like primarily like in Texas and the Southwest, Nahuale, which are, according to the people down there, and I think it's like a mix of Native American and Hispanics. The Nahuales are actually sort of a ruined beast. In other words, they had this gift, I guess you'd call it the wolf gift, pun intended, and they used it for bad purposes. And so this kind of sets the Nahuales apart. They would get their animal, they would go into their animal form to raid houses and steal and kill people that that they were angry at. And so they were kind of like condemned by spirit to be a low form among werewolves, I guess, or among skinwalkers or shapeshifters. So there's all these different kinds. I mean, because I thoroughly believe in the Wendigo, and I completely, to me, werewolves are real. I mean, even the classic, and they're kind of in that lumped in with the big dogs that are sighted, and so there's this whole canine thing, excuse me. But that came out, when I was doing some research on a cannibal tribe down here in Louisiana, who is traditionally a werewolf tribe. Actually, they were turned into werewolves because they, had raided so many people's villages, and I don't want to steal the whole thing, but they're a tribe down there with a history of, in other words, the other tribes went to war with them, and whenever they did, they knew they had to kill them, because if they got captured, then they would get eaten. And it wasn't like, oh, they were really bad cannibal people. They actually saw them as wolves on the battlefield. So it's, again, it's kind of like what you're talking about, the tulpas, the thought forms.
Well, and there also are, as long as you bring this up, there are several forms that their trademark seems to be sort of aggression, because most of the sightings that I get, and again, it's probably up to the high 90s, there's nobody injured. The creature just scares the bejabbers out of whatever people see it, and then it ducks into the cornfield or dives behind a bush or whatever and just gets out of there. It's more like a territorial scare thing. But then there are several other types. I have a good friend, Corinne Mandera, who calls this bigger, meaner type the fatheads, which is kind of because it's kind of like they're too dumb to know too dumb to know what they're up against, or it's really not to their advantage to be this way because they end up being hunted. But they're larger and meaner and uglier than the other ones, and it sounds sort of like what you were just describing there. And they would be more likely to attack people. There are also larger, very much larger ones that people will describe them as the size of a Shetland pony that don't really go on their hind legs. Well, then you can't really call it a dog man. There's nothing, human against it. It's just one really shocking big type of canine or wolf, whichever it would end up being. Most of them describe them as more dog-like. So you have all these different types of canine-like creatures, and they're probably not at all the same things. And that I decided that very, very early on, because there was just too much discrepancy, and people will just, and I do this myself, the publishers love the word werewolf in the titles. When I try to get them to use unknown upright canines, they go, oh, they're yawning before I get to the word canine. They love the word werewolf, and I admit it, and this is why I sometimes will revert to it, because it gives people a very good, quick mental picture of this dog or wolf-like creature on its hind legs, which is the basics of most of the sightings. Again, not all, but most of them. So it's handy in that way, and it pulls people into the topic, and then they can learn that there are these other types of things that are seen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I wrote an article or two for Brad Steiger's second edition of the Werewolf Encyclopedia, and I put in it some actual stories. When I lived in, I'm from New Orleans. When I lived there, when I was younger, there actually were werewolves. I'll just find it down. I could tell you more later. But the first time I ever saw one of those missing posters, like they put up now, and unfortunately we're so familiar. It was this boy. It was a little boy, not a little, but a young boy who had gotten on the bad side of a group of teenagers who were in a coven. And I know this for a fact because one of the teenagers is a cousin of mine. I don't talk to him anymore, but but he was involved. I don't think he did anything, but he knew, in other words, he knew firsthand that apparently this kid had done something to offend some teenager who was fooling around with magic. And the next thing you know, the kid went missing. And that really it stuck in my head because that was the first time I noticed those types of posters. And I was like, some kid got kidnapped. Well, about a week, maybe 2 weeks later, they had to call out animal control, the SPCA, to come out and get a dog that was terrorizing kids at the bus stops and running around off into the woods and everything. And they came and got this dog, and then the boy never showed up again, and the dog was killed. And it was like,
that's awesome.
If that was coincidence, then it was the greatest. It was a feather in the coven's cap of like, yeah, you don't mess with us because, animal control, don't play in our neighborhood because we'll turn you into an animal. But it's stuck in my mind. And I knew, knowing who I know and what he knows, I give it complete, credibility. I think that it's possible because curses are curses and hexes, are hexes, and these things work. But that is my earliest sort of brush with the supernatural being that we call a werewolf. And it was terrible.
So sad. Yeah, that's really sad. And I'll tell you, I do have people who write to me now and then and say that they are one and that they do transform. And I've been asking these people to, just put up a video camera next full moon, and it sounds funny, but really, I'm serious. If they can do that, one of my books, I have the whole letter from this guy who explains all that, and that his girlfriend chains him up in the basement once a month when the full moon comes out. And well, it would be easy just to stick a video camera in the corner. And that's not to make fun at all. It's just, it would be educational, for everybody. But for a long time, I've said, I really don't believe that there is a completely changed physical form, from one species into another. And, all the bone changes and every core puzzle that would have to devolve and then revolve back, that kind of thing. But I have had enough descriptions lately of people seeing this sort of transformation. My most recent book, Monsters Among Us, is kind of devoted to all the types of canine reports that just seemed too bizarre, too impossible, too one-off to really fit with the previous books. And I thought, well, no, there are too many of these things. If I ignore them, I'm not really investigating. And so you'll find them in this book. And among them are several really startling transformations, where one was seen by a young girl and her brother, another was seen by a middle-aged couple with 2 children in a church service, where many other people saw this, and it was rebuked by the Word of God on a Bible, the Word of God by a man holding a Bible, the preacher actually. And it was taken down by some church ushers. So before many of the back row people could see it, but a lot did. And it was an instantaneous transformation. There wasn't any, bone cracking or teeth growing or, claws coming out. Just 1 second, it was an ordinary looking lady. The next minute, she was standing up and was this huge, screaming, fur-covered, wolf-like creature. And this is one where I met the people in person. I checked out everything they told me. Everything checked out. It was some years ago in a place that, I haven't revealed and won't. And the church itself is no longer there. The congregation is scattered. But what they did tell me checked out, and I believed that, they and their 2 children were very adamant that they saw this. And they, of course, wanted to remain anonymous, but they're known to my publisher. So I think there comes a time when you get enough of these reports and there's very little way that you can explain them without going to this sort of thought. You just can't continue ignoring them.
Yeah, right. Dean, I know you want to talk. Go on.
I had a client a few years ago, and it what you said about the facial changes and things like that kind of reminded me of what happened with him, because I was interviewing him and he claimed to be possessed, and he had went into some type of trance and was talking, and his actual face was changing, and he was snarling kind of like a dog would, but it's like his nose was starting, like his facial features kind of looked like a dog for a minute, before we up and left. But after listening to the EVP, we realized he really was possessed. But the actual physical changes in him at the time scared us enough to make us leave.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen often, Linda. Just to say that. Bernadine's seen a lot, but that was bad.
That's very creepy. I have an incident like that in one of my books. Might be the Michigan Dog Man, I can't remember for sure, or else Real Wolfman. But it's an episode of, there's a woman who is studying with a Native American medicine woman to become a medicine woman. And they get to a part where she's trying to, the teacher is trying to show the student her means of showing animal faces in front of her own face. And the student said she watched as she saw first a cougar and then a bear face and then a wolf face. And the teacher got done and she said, well, how did you do that? And the teacher just said, well, it's a matter of thinking about the one that I wish to project. And that word project, I thought was very important, because that meant she was trying to describe projecting this spirit force from her over her own features somehow. And that seems to be a recurring theme. Now, I will say that, there's a point where my investigation stops. And when I get into occult practices and these occult groups and that kind of thing, that's where I hit my wall, and I just don't go any further there. I'm not the kind of specialist that you are, But as far as investigating them to a certain point, to verify that these people were telling the truth about it, as far as I could tell, and that everything checked out, that much I'll do. And then where that exact thing comes from, I don't want to touch it myself, and I think there are some things that most people in general probably shouldn't be seeking after.
Right, I agree. We agree with you on that. Because sometimes they take home a lot more than they bargained for.
Right. Exactly. I'm sure you have many clients. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And we have a lot of people who, style themselves as experts and, and do everything that you see on TV, basically, that a paranormal researcher or investigator would do. But they just have that one missing part where they either don't believe in the supernatural, which is sort of oxymoronic about why they're there, or they don't think it can hurt them, because they hear paranormal and that's all they think, but they don't really understand that what they encounter is part of a supernatural reality. It's a paranormal experience because it's out of the ordinary, but the reality is supernatural. And just like you're saying, you're wise not to go beyond, because once you begin exploring, then you get into the psychology of individuals, what they've exposed themselves to, and things like that are just really dark. I mean, it's a dark road to allow.
And you've opened yourself to them at that point.
Yes, and that door is not easy to close. For some people, it's impossible, because once you let an entity, even if it's just a human ghost, a discarnate human, take over your body, there's no real way to lock it out unless you go the route of exorcism, and religion. People don't understand this. They think it's cool, and they want to be, like they want people to believe that they're vampires or that they're, that they're wolves. And they have these little experiences with this huge supernatural reality. And then they get really hubris. You know what I mean? They begin this hubris of, I am this and I can control it. Well, so said every,
that's obsession.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. There's your.
There, I predicted it. That was my prediction.
That's right. We have dueling dogs. Mine's outside. I put her outside, and she's currently destroying a broom, so she's occupied. So it's like dueling dogs. But yeah, I wanted to talk to you, and Dean, if you want to go into it, the new book, The Monsters Among Us, because there's more that you have. It's sort of like, are you looking at aliens and other cryptoids like Bigfoot and everything in this book?
Yeah, the funny thing is that people always ask me if I've had sightings of cryptids, and my answer over the years, after 25 years, was, as far as dogmen went, I possibly had one partial sighting of a dog man in Michigan. It was something, I saw the gray spine of something 7 feet tall just flash under a light as it crossed the road. I couldn't tell you for sure what it was, but it matched, in that much anyway, the description of the witnesses who had seen one there. But when it comes to Bigfoot, I started seeing Bigfoot several years ago in several known places. I had several sightings, and that, of course, hasn't been, I've actually had Bigfoot reports since I started too. It just hasn't been my big emphasis. So I have seen those. But this book also chronicles the help that I gave a researcher who bought some property near Bray Road a few years ago to raise hay for his horses in Illinois. Started finding mutilated creatures, realized that there were tracks made by some type of large canine, and then found out from his neighbors that about the Beast of Bray Road. He hadn't known anything about it at all.
Wow.
And so he contacted me, and I assisted him for the past several years. He had up to three at a time trail cams set up and started showing all kinds of anomalies, like mists, things that looked exactly like an opening portal, and then you see something furry and black at the end of the sequence. crazy light forms that would blot out other things strategically.
Wow.
You
Wow.
name it. We even had, it's kind of the pinnacle of the book, but he and another colleague of mine and myself actually had a close-up experience with one of those round basketball-sized spheres of kind of inward light. Yeah, that we all experienced simultaneously, saw, you know, and interacted with in a certain way that was really deeply frightening.
I guess so.
I can say that, yeah, and things are still going on out there, and that gentleman actually has his own blog that he put up on WordPress, where he has started chronicling himself some of the things that happen. And if you go to WordPress and do a search on their homepage, WordPress.com, and then you do a search for Roy Smith's with an apostrophe Hayfield, and Hayfield is one word. You can get some other things from him and ask him questions directly.
Oh, wow. All right, Dean, put that down. Maybe he'll come on the show. That would be great. But isn't that is frightening when you mention like you know, like the portal opening up and you know, a shadow coming through. That's just what we were talking about, like the projection of the thought form, or the berserkers or the berserkers that, you know, that used to project themselves to the battlefield.
Right.
It's always interesting when actual research or, you know, evidence jives with folklore and tradition and occult tradition, or just, you know, folklore tradition about how these things operate. And then you see it, because now we have this amazing technology. It's just, you know, it's just mind boggling. I mean, of course you could do a voodoo ritual too, you know, and then get your mind boggled that way.
Not
that
me.
Works too.
No.
I gave all that up. It's
I'll leave
like,
that for someone else. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's not what it's cracked up to be. Let's put it that way. So, but Bernadine, go ahead. I know you got some questions about her book.
I know we don't have that much more time, but I have a question that I had asked another guy that we had on. Mainly, he researches Bigfoot sightings.
Nick Redfern. Yeah.
Nick Redfern. Okay. I had asked him.
He's a good friend, a good guy.
Yeah, I figured he was. Yeah.
My question to him was, a lot of people see Bigfoot, they have the sightings, but what about the family of Bigfoot? They can't just be one, as many sightings as they have around, you know, the world.
No.
Do they ever see like a teenager?
Yes.
Bigfoot, a mother Bigfoot, the family, you know, where
Sure.
do they hide and the father feeds them? How does that work?
No, there are plenty of sightings like that. In fact, I know of one in southeastern Wisconsin that was near a large chicken farm, and one of the owner of the chicken farm, who is a professional in another vocation than just that, has seen a group of Bigfoots come to the edge of their property where they had put out they had some butchered chicken remains and put them out there. And it was winter, and there was what looked like a female Bigfoot carrying a little one in her arms, and she got up to that pile, set it down in the snow, and then picked up what she wanted from the chicken remains, scooped the little one back up in her other arm, and went back in the woods. Now, this woman would not be lying about that if you knew who she was and that kind of thing. There's no way that she made that up. She's totally not into any type of zoology. But she was able to go out later and see the little baby's butt print, you know, in the snow.
Oh.
And not being an investigator, of course, she didn't take a picture or anything of it. But yeah, there are lots of people who see what they call the juveniles. They're usually, you know, maybe half again as big, and even the mothers carrying the little ones. And there are theories that I've heard from some Native American friends that the Bigfoot and the man wolf or dog man or wolf man, whatever you call them, go back and forth between our level of reality and what the Native Americans call the spirit world. You could think of it as a different reality or another tuning of reality, whatever you want. But they go back and forth between these. And some have speculated that maybe they come here partly because it's easier to give birth and reproduce themselves when they're in the flesh than it is in the spirit world. And maybe that's how they do. That's just one idea as to what they want with us and why they're here. You know, they can come here, have the little ones, and then take them back in. That's just an idea.
Well, it sounds like they're very intelligent, more intelligent than we are because we can't capture them.
Yeah, they keep eluding us for some
If you look
reason.
at it that way, they are very intelligent. Whatever they are, there's a real intelligence there. I can say that, whether they're flesh and blood or half and half, or, you know, spirit masquerading as flesh, whatever it is, they are intelligent, and there's no doubt about that.
Well, I've watched some of those shows, you know, shows that Nick's been on, and these, you know, and other people who are, you know, Bigfoot hunters. And when they go out there into the wilderness, and you hear these calls, you know, and you kind of, they can kind of identify if it's a deer or this or a moose or whatever. But there's this one where you just hear this scream, and it's, you know, it's just terrifying. I don't think I could handle knowing, you know, like Bigfoot was like in the camp or something. I just couldn't do it. You know?
Yeah,
I have to dig a foxhole and just hope for the best, because
they're very imposing. You know, people will say, well, if I ran into one of these things or a dog man, what would I do? And I just say, treat it with the same respect that you would any other large predator that you might encounter in the woods, you know. And if you can, quietly remove yourself from the situation as quickly as possible without turning and running, because that makes you prey. But, you know, just have respect for them, because in the final analysis, nobody, even though some of us have better ideas than others. I know people who have been very close to Bigfoot, have spent time around them, and are pretty sure they know, you know, about what they are. But most of us just can't be that sure. So, you know, just be respectful. And I think if you have that attitude, things will usually go a lot better for you.
Yeah, and that's like the blanket thing for all supernatural beings, you know. And again, we don't find that. We do find it, but it's not like a common denominator, you know, under some of the teams that are out there, or the people that are out there claiming, you know, to be experts and stuff. But some of them are taking too many chances than is wise, you know, for them, because these beings all come from, you know, a world that is just as real as ours is to us, and they have their own laws and, you know, guidelines, I guess, or the way that they interact. So
I think we are the threat. We are the threat to them.
Yeah. Well, but Linda, you have this book, Monsters Among Us, is coming out in October, right?
That actually came out last October.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. Yes, it did. I don't look. If you knew me, this would not. It's not wrong. I'm sorry.
It's out and available, and has.
Ah, okay. I read the date wrong.
Lots and lots of strange things. Yeah, so you can get that one. I'm working the next.
I want to get that one. I am.
The next one may be out. It should be out next fall, a year from this fall.
And what's that one going to be?
It's still a work in progress, and so the publisher doesn't like me to talk a lot about it. It will involve more strange creatures, though. I can, but coming at it from a different angle that I haven't really explored before, and that the publisher asked me to do. So I think people will find it of interest, definitely.
And if somebody wants to find you for, you know, to report their experiences with something crazy, where would they go for you?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Yes, please go to lindagodfrey.com. There's no www or anything. It's a WordPress blog, lindagodfrey.com. You can find all of the things you mentioned, my book list, lots more stuff. Some of the old Beast of Bray Road page, which, by the way, there was a page called beastofbrayroad.com, which is being switched to another server that may take a while. So if you don't find that, don't worry. But lindagodfrey.com will tell you everything else and provide a form that you can write to me on.
Definitely. That's great. Well, we're so glad to have you on our show. Another great guest, Bernadine. Bernadine's a scheduler. I do all the other kind of silly stuff. But this is great because I've watched you. Like I said, I've seen you on like all kind of programs, you know, and I believe in it.
It's
I believe
something.
it's out there. Yeah.
It is something. I don't know what, I still don't claim to know what it or any of the other things are, but they are something more than people's imaginations, or we would not be having such detailed, consistent sightings from around the world and throughout time and the human civilization of all of these things.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
as they've been. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated it.
I'm going
Thank
out and
you,
buying your
Linda.
book. I'm going to go get your book.
Thanks so much.
And I'll be looking for the other one that really is going to be new. I'm sorry.
That's
Middle
okay. No
age.
problem.
All right, Linda. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Good night, Linda.
Bye bye.
Good night.
Well, I believe it. I believe in all that stuff
Yes, ma'am.
because I know it's true.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, so we're going to take a break now and we'll get with you on the flip side. We're going to announce the winner of the 2 free passes to Gulf Coast Paracon, which is next weekend in Biloxi, Mississippi. So come back with us. Are you off? No. And we're back. And we're back. So, we're back. Who says that? Who does that? And we're back. I can't remember who that is. I think it's a sportscaster, but I can't be sure. Yeah, we're back. This is Supernatural Substation. And it was a terrific interview with Linda Godfrey. Do you agree, Dean?
Yes, I do. Great guess.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to have her back, and I'd like you to track down some of these people that have had these experiences she's talking about. So, how do you feel about werewolves for real?
For real, I don't know. In the supernatural realm, yeah, in the supernatural realm, I can see them maybe attaching to somebody and making them feel like they're a werewolf, or even shape-shifting at some point. Not structurally, like she was saying, you can't do that, but like what I've seen, a person's face changing into an animal, I mean, I have seen that.
Yeah.
Not with the hair, but the facial features.
Well, the beginnings of it,
Right.
I mean, some people, they can become so enslaved by just the spirits, that they come into contact with through ritual or occultism or not believing in stuff, that there definitely are creatures out there in the, and once they begin to pollute your aura or your magnetic aura, then they have a lot of effect on the way you're perceived. I mean, the person himself might not see anything if he looks in a mirror, but everybody else, is seeing that growling, snarling, or whatever.
And that even goes for like the zombie thing, when that drug came out that made people act like zombies and want to eat people. They actually looked like zombies.
They did. The eyes protruding, and if you look on YouTube, there are some terrifying videos. And then not only that, like zombies, like remember PCP? You don't hear about it as much, but way back in the 80s, there was a big problem with PCP. And one of the problems that law enforcement, was having with that is they just kept on coming. I mean, you'd literally have to shoot them dead through the heart to take them down, in other words, because nothing would work because they were in this like complete heightened, this heightened sense of wherever craziness. Well, how different is that from some Hindu yogi, who's practicing transcendental meditation? That's like the same thing. You get into this, once they pass a certain stage where they come into contact with spiritual reality or supernatural reality, they've got to pass several planes of existence to get to that mental state where they can interact with God or whatever. And the guy smoking spice ain't doing it, but the yogi too, they have to go through, fending off possession of their body as well. And a lot of them don't do it well. So it's our animal natures and it's the way that they're manipulated by spirits around us. But, as far as the berserkers and the actual projecting themselves to the battlefield, that's absolutely possible. And they described it as, how when people describe astral projection and like there's a silver thread, they'll often describe it as, the astral thread that keeps your spirit tethered.
Your astral cord.
Right, cord. It's
connected
the same
to your
thing.
sternum. Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing with the berserkers. Like they would go into a tent and they would be uninterrupted. And if somebody happened to break their concentration or their deep state, the bear or whatever it was they were projecting, the wolf or whatever it was they were fighting as on the battlefield would suddenly just disappear. And there are records of that. I mean, there are accounts of battles, that where this has happened. And it's just total weirdness, but it's totally possible. I mean, knowing the occult the way that we do, it's absolute. And the things that we've seen, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We ought to start getting tattoos for every case we solve. No. Did you hear me? It said October 2016. And I'm looking, I said, oh, it's coming out this October. Oh. This show comes on too late. All right. Well, we did have some names, and my beautiful daughter came home, and I gave her the 3 names and she shook them around, and whichever one fell out is the one that she picked up, she said. And that is the winner of the 2 free passes to the Gulf Coast Paracon next weekend in Biloxi is Miss Kristen Denton. So, Kristen, if you're listening, I'm also going to message you. Contact Paula Westbrook. You can do it by Facebook. If you know her, you may know her. And Paula will get your name and information and set you up with those 2 free passes. So, Kristen Denton, and you can come by and introduce yourself to me and Bernadine. That wasn't very Bernadine and I'm sorry. Come and see us, and we'll chat with you then. So there's our winners. Well, we had 2, 3, I don't know. So Paula gave out one, but Bernadine said we didn't do it last week. I'm sorry. I don't know if I did. I didn't know where I was last week. So anyway, yeah, next weekend, that's Gulf Coast Paracon. We'll be broadcasting as live as we can get from there. We've done some sort of like on the fly things the past couple of times. This time, I think it's going to involve we'll have to talk to Joe the man, but it's probably going to involve Spreaker and Facebook Live. So since each of us, Bernadine, has a phone.
Mhm.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, be looking for that, and we'll put the info out. Just tune in next Friday as usual, and we will be connected to the Gulf Coast Paracon. It's always a fun event. It's a nice getaway. It's a nice day. It's a Saturday. It's you can spend it on the coast right there, and get your paranormal what do you call it, Jones on. Keith Age is going to be there. Kevin Betzer, Paula, her team. There's some other ones that I'm sorry, but the names are not in front of me. But there's several speakers that are great, and there's Bernadine and I. We're just, indescribably whatever. So Dean and I will be participating in a panel with James and Nito, and I'm sorry, the other girl
Sasha.
Sasha Clenot. I'm sorry, bad with names, good with faces. So and that's on Saturday. I don't know the time, but it will be on the schedule. So if you're not doing anything, feel like taking a nice ride in your local or regional, check it out, and you get to hopefully a chance to investigate Beauvoir at night, because there will be an overnight investigation there. So
I will be one of the lead investigators.
I have one more thing. Our friend Pete Haviland in Houston has asked us to mention an event that he is at, and I pulled it up, but of course it went away. So let me pull up the messenger. I'm surprised that here it is. September 16th and 17th in Houston, Texas. It is called the New Paradigms Conference and Holistic Expo. I'm sorry. Explore new paradigms and expand your world. It is 16th and 17th at the West Chase Hilton Convention Center, Conference Center, West Chase Hilton Conference Center on Westheimer Road. I can't see the address. I think it's 8999 Westheimer Road in Houston. It's www.newparacon.com. Pete Haviland is a great friend, and he is also, and there's the dog, and he's also going to be returning as a guest this year, but he's a certified hypnotist, license to use it. So check it out if you're in Houston. If you are people from Houston, it might give you a little bit of a break from, some of the bad stuff that's happened. So, check it out. Tell them we sent you.
He's coming back November 17th.
Yeah, he'll be back. And next week is the show, and then we start October. Who's coming on to talk about their events this October? We have, is it John Foray coming back to talk about, coincidentally, the Rougarou Fest?
I don't have him scheduled yet because he's looking at a date.
Oh, okay.
But we do have Brennan Starr and Rich Newman, Karen Anderson. And then we have Halloween weekend. Right. Yes, as our guest.
We're going to be cooking up something for Halloween. That's as far as the caricature of witches that it is. Yeah, but we'll be cooking up something. I don't know, a program or some music, whatever we're going to do. So we put something together last year. It'll be probably even better this year since I know what I'm doing a little bit more. So, but anyway, yeah. And if you're interested at all in checking us out online, Bernadine, why don't you give your site information and your contact information?
My website is www.lspr-society.com. My email is Bernadine, spelled BERNADINE, at
lspr-society.com. If you .com. And you can. I actually am transiting to a new website. So I'm using the Wix website creator to do that. So if you're looking for me, I am at AleenPastanio.net, first and last name. I'm also on Tumblr, Twitter, not so much Twitter, Instagram, etc. I mean, we are the Substation as well as us. And go and like our YouTube page, which we do need subscribers. All of our shows are going to be posted over there every week, and then some of the old ones as well. But you check out and see what you think about my new site. Is at it's on Wix. It's AleenPastanio.wix.com. Just check it out and search me on there. It is published. It's got some content, but I've got a contact form. And if you like it, then let me know. If you don't like it, just tell me. That's fine. Just say it. Don't have to get off. Now, there's a couple of other things coming up too, and that's why I was asking some of those some of our early segments, 30 minutes or so. We're going to be inviting Sue Kiraz is going to come and tell us about the Anne Rice Vampire Lestat ball, which happens every year. We're going to hopefully have John Foray to tell us about the Rougarou Fest. Mardi Gras in New Orleans it always means endless nights. And I was looking at their Facebook page, and the theme is Gods and Monsters. So the theme for the Vampire Lestat ball is apparently Atlantis. Lestat in Atlantis. Okay. A vampire under the water. No, I guess I don't know. I don't know. What do you think, Dean?
Vampire under the water.
Hey. And Endless Nights, Gods and Monsters. And then there's all kind of other stuff on it. And what were you sending me another email about? You were telling me about, was it the Worldwide Ghost Hunt or whatever, ghost investigation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They keep asking you to participate, right?
They keep asking.
Yeah. Well, just envision yourself in a ball of white light.
No, it's just not gonna happen. Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
I'm just gonna wait for the clients to call me after the fact.
Yeah, it'll be all kind of, I participated in this and now I don't know what to do. It's like, okay. I mean, I'm not criticizing anybody actually, but it's like I wouldn't go in a submarine with, I don't know, some Subway sandwich maker, right? I wouldn't do it. This is uncontrollable. It doesn't, it's uncontrollable. So many people across the earth, and this is something we've been able to talk about with Linda about the power of thought and the power of believing. I mean, all magic, voodoo especially, is based in the power of suggestion and the power of believing, etc. So we're just going to stand back. That's happening on when? The 30th or something of September. We're just going to stand back and watch it unfold. So anything else, Dean?
Nope, that's about it.
That's about it from here too. Stay tuned for Miss Kathy Bilski and Quantum Leap. Stay up for 2 a.m. when you will tune into Terminus. Tonight we are meeting with Hell, the Queen of the Inglorious Dead. I worked it up. It's like 3 hours of some great music, so presented by us. And tune in next week for our live from Gulf Coast Paracon. This is the Supernatural Substation signing out on the United Public Radio Network, an iHeartRadio partner. Have a great weekend. Say good night, Dean.
Night, night.
Nighty night. Oh.
Night, Zeke.